Hey, welcome back to the channel. It's just awesome that you're tuning in. So in today's video we are going to talk about the top 10, or better said, the best clone systems if it comes to Sega Megadrive / Genesis. Depends of course where you're living. I did a lot of reviews the couple of years and I did find some interesting versions. And maybe you're just tuning in, maybe you're just a new member of the Wickedfamily, or you just clicked this video. So I did a more like this quick recap so you can see what kind of products are maybe worth your money or your attention. Because I can tell you, there are some little surprises in this top 10 that you're going to like. Because there are some clones out there that are not really shitty. And yes people, there will be some Atgames because that is going to be included in this list. No analog or expensive HDMI versions and not the original Sega Mini Classic. Because I want to focus with this videos purely on the Chinese clone systems. Right, I would say enjoy your stay, get yourself something to drink, consider subscribing, hit the little bell, become one of the Wicked family, and let's go. For the number 10 position, I give you an Atgames. Yes, we start off with the shit show, because the Atgames comes in freaking many forms and colors. This is the Street of Rage edition, and because I just like Street of Rage, and it's bad, but it plays original games. I'll give this thing the number 10 position. But now you're thinking, why do you put this thing in your top 10? Simply because I think it's more like a collectible value. If you're into collecting of these Sega clones, I think this thing is pretty cool. Street of Rage doesn't give you a lot of extra stuff, what I understand of. Maybe they swap, let's say, some games around that this thing has, let's say, Street of Rage 1 or 2. But at the end, if you look at the device itself, the casing, the controllers, even our freaking controllers are infrared, it's just horrible. But nevertheless, the games are not bad at all. It plays original games. Keep in mind, the Sonic 3 and Knuckles combination cards or action replay doesn't work at all, or an Megadrive for example. But I think, again, for collectible value, this thing still deserves a number 10 spot. It's bad, it's really shitty, but still, it's a Street of Rage collectible Atgame system. So for the number 9, I'll give you the Sega Genesis number 3, yes, the core system. I picked it up quite some time ago and I just needed to check it out. It even includes a Super 368 in one. If you look at the box already, you can see this is a horrible ripoff. They even paid not a lot of attention to the quality of the box. It says Genesis 3 even including Sega decals. I couldn't find any information if this was an official release or they just basically ripped it off. The controllers were 6-button are so horrible, you don't want to play with it. At the end, it's the same story like a lot of these clones. It plays the games, has a very poor signal output. They say it included a King Series 368 in one, but at the end when you're looking at the list, it's just basically a repeat of the couple of games. So it's just pretty damn horrible, and the games are on it are some good games like Sonic 1. So maybe the shell is fun to stick a pie in, for example, but at the end, if you look at the quality, the controllers, the system, it's just one big nightmare. So if you came across this thing and somebody asking you a lot of money, please avoid it, because this thing is pretty damn shitty. You can pick it up for a couple of euros or on a flea market, for example, and you want to have this thing for collectible value. Yeah, it's a fun thing to collect. So this is what you're going to get with the Sega Sonic Genesis, what the number 9 position. So the last couple of years they released a lot of different mini versions. We began the journey with YouTube and buying stuff from China with the SNES and NES mini classics. But very fast they ripped off the Sega and starting to produce these weird mini Sega Megadrive clone systems. The idea behind it is pretty funny. But if you look at the overall quality, the controllers are a little bit better than the previous model or the Genesis 3. But don't get me wrong, it's pretty damn shitty. It's a 6-button controller, but you need to use original controls because these things are most of the time very unplayable. We're having all the necessary parts like a power adapter, and some have even an HDMI connection like this one. So this mini device comes with 168 in one built-in games. It's based on more like the similar technology that they're using on the Atgames, because if you look at the audio quality and all the stuff that came with it, it was pretty damn horrible. The gameplay itself is not really awful. It had HDMI, so the colors look very nice when you're listening to the sound. So the K9 deserves a little spot in the list because of the HDMI connection. That is something that was very unique when these little devices were released. At the end, shitty controllers. It's a pretty decent game list, but the sound is mono and sounds like shit. So yeah, how can you mess it up? They did it. But still, it deserves a small position in my top 10. The K9 with HDMI. But alright, we are back higher up in the list with a new Sega Mini clone, but this thing looks pretty damn cool, to be honest. The Super Mini and the video TV game 16-bit, so there are now of these 8-bit bullshit systems out there. I picked this thing up, it was not cheap, so that's to begin with, was a little bit more expensive than the previous models. There were some little downsides to this thing. If you look at the connection, there is no HDMI. So they're talking about the built-in 2 GB games. Yeah, great. Alright, so this thing comes also with the 16-bit 6-button controller. And I must say, they are not to be compared with the original Sega Megadrive controllers. But this thing was not that bad. It was a little bit better than the previous model. The reason why this thing comes a little bit higher on my list is simply because this thing looks pretty damn awesome. Look at this. It's not to be compared with the, let's say, the original Sega Megadrive Mini Classic, but this thing looks pretty cool. It looks pretty legit. The volume control doesn't work, the on and off works, the reset button works, and the 16-bit looks awesome. So they did a really nice job, and that is one of the reasons why this thing comes a little bit higher in my list. It doesn't have an HDMI, and that is such a big bummer if it comes to this little mean machine. The game list itself looked a little bit basic. But I must say, if you look at the collection and you see the full review, you will see that it has a lot of great games built in. 208 games, gigantic list, and a lot of good games. So they moved on from the shitty games. And they even added some homebrew games. I can personally appreciate it when you're buying as a weird clone system and we're having these weird homebrew games. Super Laser! Oh. Even with the AV out, the image quality is not bad at all. Of course, the sound is not 100% legit compared with the Megadrive/Genesis. But at the end, if you look at the combination of the not shitty controls, the homebrew games are pretty awful, but really funny to play sometimes. It's pretty cool. And if you compare this with other devices, this is the main reason why this thing is a little bit higher up in my list. So that is the reason why it deserves a spot, and the reason why it didn't get a higher spot is very simple. It didn't have HDMI. So this is what it is with this version. And in the video I also ripped it apart. Yeah. For this position we choose the Powkatty Super Mini K9. So this thing also has video out or a normal signal out. There is no HDMI connection. That is a pretty common problem with these clone systems, that we don't have this. But at the end I really love the design if it comes to the mini cartridges that we had. It's a little bit of a shame that it didn't do anything with it, because you bought the product and that's it. You're going to get one cartridge with the games and that's it. So I love to see more like the Sega Mini Classic version that came with these mini Megadrive cartridges. But at the end the controller were just the same story like the previous model. It was not bad, but was not to be compared with the original Sega Megadrive. The game list, they did some more effort, and you do see these lists with, let's say, some other Sega clone systems, for example handhelds, that we have in this categorized system, and all these little thumbnails that come with the games. At the end it's just one big mess if it comes to where to find the game. There are a lot of great games, but there are a lot of shitty games. I really like what they're doing over here with this, let's say, categorized system. It's pretty cool and pretty neat. You also see this with 8-bit systems. But always when we are going to play the Sega games, you can tell that it's a pretty damn awful emulation. And you can see it and you can also hear it. Alright, push button. I give this position to the K8. I really love this mini cartridge. It's a funny product, but at the end, if you look at the gameplay, it's pretty damn awful. But nevertheless, that's what we're going to get with a clone. Let's go to the next one. Alright, so let's talk about the Megadrive from Atgames. But this is the first model. Yes people, the first version. And later on in this list we're going to talk about the other version I've reviewed here on the channel. And it's going to surprise you, I can tell you that. So this was basically the first clone if you look at the Megadrive official product from Sega. This was licensed, but at the end it was pretty crappy, of course. But it came with a lot of great decent games, and we even had the option to play original cartridges. And what I really liked about the Atgames is that it comes with this fancy menu, and of course a lot of bonus shitty games that we're not asking for. But at the end, it's a little bit of a downside that this thing is pure an emulation machine. So this thing connects with the HDMI function and it looked very nice. The emulation was not spot on and it was pretty damn horrible compared with the original Sega. But at the end it was way better than the previous models in this list. So this thing deserves a little bit a higher spot in the list. Because it plays original games, the emulation is way better than the previous models I have reviewed in this top 10. So playing original games, it was not perfect and the experience cannot be compared with the official Sega Mega Drive from the 90s. So for the next one we're having the Super Mini K9 from Kitty. Yes people, because we have another Sega Mini Classic clone. This thing looks a little bit like a Frankenstein, to be honest. It is not really a very nice mini copy of the original 90s Sega Mega Drive Genesis. No, but it is more like the same story. The problem I had with this device was very simple, that it has not only double quality control. The system itself looks horrible to begin with. The controllers were the same shitty stuff, 16-bit. 6-button controllers that doesn't play at all. It doesn't play like the real deal. But this time they added HDMI, freaking finally, on the mini clone. But the question of course remains, how is the menu and what are we going to get? Because the controls, yeah, the same story, like always. 168 in one, and I can tell you, the games are funny. We're having some weird homebrew games and some awesome great games. The menu, I like it with the little thumbnails, and the collection is in overall not really bad. The image looks pretty nice and crisp and clear, but they basically messed it up with the audio. Like always, we're having horrible sound effects and mono sound. I find it such a big shame that they messed it up if it comes to the audio, because in overall it's not a very bad product if you look at the image quality, let's put it this way. So that's the reason I put this thing a little bit higher in my list, because don't get me wrong, it's still shitty, but it's less shittier than the other ones. Yeah, the Frankenstein 60-bit Mini Classic from China. For this position I choose the Mini G1 Classic Family and Arcade Games. It has nothing to do with arcade games, it's just 16-bit like the Mega Drive. But there are some couple of things on this device that I really liked, and I think that this thing just deserves a way bigger spot or higher spot in this list. One of the reasons is that the controls were pretty good. They looked, of course, like rip-off controls from the Sega Mega Drive, but at the end, this device was not bad. And yeah, I know, it didn't have an HDMI connection. That was the biggest fail of this device. Does this thing earn a higher spot in my list because it looks so cool? No, not at all. The reason was not only the controls were very nice, and of course you can use your original controls from the Megadrive. First of all, this thing has a very good game collection. 168 and a lot of great games. The menu looks pretty damn awesome and very fancy with different thumbnails. But I can tell you, this thing has pretty good emulation. Even for a fake system, this thing was pretty damn awesome. It's a shame they didn't use the HDMI, because if they do, they would be the best, let's say the best clone system out there. So no, they didn't. We're having AV out. So if you're having an old school CRT TV, this thing is pretty damn awesome, and the audio, I wouldn't say it's spot on, but it's getting very close. For the number 2 position, I give this to the Retroad HD retro gaming system. This thing has AV out and HDMI, but of course I don't know how it was with you, but I bought this thing for the HDMI function. And at the end I was very surprised of the quality. The controllers are wireless, and of course you can use original controllers. The Retro Genesis is the newer model, because don't get me wrong, there are 2 versions out there, but it was pretty damn awesome. And this thing even comes including a multi-card built inside. It has a different region, so we can play PAL, and you can play the other regions like Japan and USA. That's a really nice features, but don't get me wrong, this thing doesn't have the support for the Sega CD. That would be indeed very awesome, but no, sadly it doesn't. So keep that in mind, that you're still very limited with this clone. But when you're a big audio fan like me, you can hear that the sound is not perfect in many ways. Very weird, let's say, sound effects, and there are some weird stuff going on. For example, if you listen to the turtle fighting game, you can see it goes turbo mode with this music. At the end, it's not perfect and flawed in many ways, but it is a pretty decent system, and of course it plays original games. So I give this thing a little bit higher position in the list. Alright, so for the number 1 position, I give this to the Atgames Model 2. But before you're going to hate me for this and going to leave some comments or dislike, hear me out, and I'm going to tell you why I chose this device for the number 1 position. So this is the retro system, the Sega Mini Classic, that was released before the official one. And fun fact, every flaw they made and every problem we had with the previous model, they fixed it. And even to top it off, they had an SD function added to this device. It was very easy to modify it. It was very easy to add new games, so we can play original games on the Atgames, and we even can use the SD function, giving us the option to use more like a soft mod, plug and play very easily, to add and remove, and to give us the option to play 32-8 games and Mega CD games, or Sega CD. Came with 2 wireless 2.4 GHz controller, and all the flaws were removed. We even had an on and off switch, so that is pretty damn awesome. It played like the original games and we can remove the batteries and swap them out very easily. It works on just a basic USB micro 5V adapter, and of course we having HDMI. Despite we having this fancy menu and they improved the navigation, we still had a lot of shitty bonus games. Nevertheless, they fixed a lot of stuff. We can always play in 4x3 or 16x9, and we're having this fancy new background. Like the previous model, we had the quick load and quick save with different save slots. No glitchy, no weird stuff going on with the sound, it was basically spot on. With the soft mount we can even play the old school Sega 8-bit games. And that is pretty damn awesome if you ask me. If you're searching for an all-in-one clone system, I think the Atgames Model number 2 is the best choice to go. You can play original games, you can basically use the SD card to load up all your files and even do a little bit of a soft modding so you can play even more than only 16-bit. At the end, I don't know where to get it for everybody because here in my country it's for sale with a couple of stores. Maybe in the future you can find on Amazon or eBay or different places. I think it's a very good experience. You can play also the original games, so the Atgames is one of my favorite systems. I want to thank you for watching. It would be great to have your opinion in the comments. What is your favorite system here in this top 10? I want to thank you for watching. Would be great to have you here in the Wicked family, so consider subscribing, hit the little bell and give this video a thumb up, and that means I will see you in the next video.